He made so much money, he couldn't even spend it. At one point, cash was being buried in fields, hidden in warehouses, even rotting away because there was too much to count. But money isn't what made him dangerous. What made him dangerous was the system he built. A system where people didn't just work for him, they depended on him. A system where entire cities protected him and entire governments feared him. For years, no one could touch him. Not the police, not the military, not even rival cartels. Because stopping him didn't just mean taking down a man, it meant breaking an entire network. This is the story of Pablo Escobar and the system that made him untouchable. But he didn't start as a king. He grew up in a modest family, far from power, but from a young age, he wasn't chasing survival, he was chasing scale. While others followed normal paths, he moved into smuggling early, learning how to move goods quietly, avoid authorities, and build connections that could be used later. Every small operation became a lesson, every risk became an advantage, and over time, he started to understand something most people never do. If you control the system, you control the outcome. And this is where everything changed. When cocaine demand exploded in the United States during the 1980s, most criminals saw fast money. He saw an empire. He didn't just enter the trade, he rebuilt it. He created routes that stretched across countries, used planes, boats, and hidden corridors, and designed layers so that even if one part failed, the system kept moving. He didn't rely on middlemen, he reduced dependency, took ownership of key operations, and made sure that every stage answered back to him. Production, transportation, distribution, it all connected. And over time, that system became the Medellin cartel, one of the most powerful drug operations in history. But this is what made him truly dangerous. He didn't just control movement, he controlled decisions. His strategy was simple, brutal, and impossible to ignore: plata o plomo, silver or lead. Take the money or take a bullet. It wasn't a threat, it was a rule. Police officers, judges, politicians, entire systems were forced into a choice, and most chose survival. And slowly, the system around him started bending. But fear alone doesn't build something this powerful. Loyalty does. And this is where he became untouchable. While power was enforced at the top through fear, it was protected at the bottom through support. He invested heavily in communities that had been ignored for years, building houses, funding local projects, creating spaces where people felt seen for the first time. In areas where the government had little presence, his presence felt immediate and real. To many, he wasn't just a criminal, he was someone who delivered results. And that created something stronger than fear, it created belief. People warned him before raids, hid him when he needed to disappear, and protected him without being asked. Entire neighborhoods became part of his defense system, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Information moved faster than the authorities, and movements were tracked long before any official action could take place. This combination of fear at the top and loyalty at the bottom created a network that was almost impossible to break. That's why no one could touch him. But power like this doesn't stay stable, it builds pressure. And this is where the system started to break. As his empire grew, so did the violence, bombings, assassinations, wars with rival cartels. The chaos didn't stay hidden anymore. The same fear that protected him started creating enemies. The same system that made him untouchable made him visible. Governments couldn't ignore him anymore. Colombia, backed by international forces, turned its full attention toward one man. And slowly, the system he built began to crack. The larger it became, the harder it was to control. More people meant more risk, more movement meant more exposure, and more power meant more attention. He became increasingly isolated, constantly moving, trusting fewer people. The network that once protected him started shrinking. The flow of information weakened, mistakes increased, and the control he once had started slipping. He was no longer operating from strength. He was reacting to pressure. And in the end, it wasn't just law enforcement chasing him. It was the weight of his own system closing in from every direction. In 1993, after years of pursuit, he was finally located and killed. And just like that, the man who built one of the most powerful criminal systems in history was gone. But here's the real story. He wasn't brought down just by the authorities. He was brought down by the very system that made him powerful. Because a system built on fear, control, and constant expansion doesn't just dominate others, it creates pressure that keeps growing. Every layer adds complexity, every decision adds risk, and eventually the structure becomes too heavy to hold itself together. The more power he gained, the more pressure he created. And one day, that pressure became impossible to manage. That was the secret behind his rise. And in the end, the reason behind his fall.